Now, as the entire issue of illegal migrants in the US gathers momentum and how the Trump administration would like to address it and go about deporting them, we heard the External Affairs Minister Jaishankar address the subject in Washington. And Mr. Jaishankar has said that India has always been open to the legitimate return of undocumented Indians to their country. He was answering a question based on news reports that India is working with the Trump administration for the deportation of some 180,000 Indians in the US who are either undocumented or have overstayed their visas. Then, in the same context, Minister Jaishankar has also said that legal mobility should be made easier, which is a clear reference to the 400-odd days that one has to wait to get a US visa. That's something that is true for Indian citizens. But that's not all. We've heard from the American president too about H-1B visas. Donald Trump says in a news conference that he supports the H-1B program and he wants, in his words, very competent people to come to the US. So what are the implications of the American push to get rid of illegal migrants? What is India's stance on this? What would be the economics of such an exercise of deportation? And can the US afford not to be supportive of the H-1B program? We're going to discuss all of that. But first, let's hear out what the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has said.
We have a position on mobility which is a principal position that applies to all countries. As a government, we obviously are very much supportive of legal mobility because we do believe in a global workplace. We want Indian talent and Indian skills to have the maximum opportunity at a global level. At the same time, we are also very firmly opposed to illegal mobility and illegal migration because you also know that when something illegal happens, many other illegal activities get joined onto it. And it's not, this is not desirable, it's certainly not reputationally good. We have, with every country, and the US is no exception, we have always taken the view that if there are any of our citizens who are not here legally, if we are sure that they are our citizens, we have always been, open to their legitimate return to India.
Let's decode what S. Jaishankar is saying there in Washington. And for that, former Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar is with us. Ambassador, you worked in various diplomatic missions, and that includes the Indian mission in Washington. Tell us, in your understanding, how important is it for the External Affairs Minister to put out there to the Trump administration right now that India is ready and willing to take back illegal migrants of Indian origin?
For having me on your show, I think, as the External Affairs Minister said it very rightly, and he was very clear and explicit in what he stated, that what India is interested in is basically sending out our talent legally. And I recall very well, when I used to be ambassador in Sweden also, that was the first migration and mobility agreement that India had signed with any country. And in fact, in Sweden at that time, and I'm sure that's the case, continues to be now, the legally, migrants from India, the Indian diaspora, was the largest there because the needs and the requirements of these countries are growing. There is a graying population there. There is a demographic decline in all these countries, not so much in the United States, but in many other countries, particularly Sweden, Europe, etc., etc. And so they are looking for hands to work. And of course, if there's talent, those who are well trained and well equipped, they would welcome them. So I think if there is a legal movement of such personnel from India, it goes a long way in terms of, remittances that they are sending, in terms of better relations between the two countries. They really prove to be a living bridge between our two nations. So I think what the minister said was very clear. We are not in support of sending out illegal migrants. Many are people who go out of the country, they should be able to go out with their head held high.
Exactly.
And should be able to represent the country and work well to the mutual benefit of both countries.
And when that does not happen, Ambassador Sajjanhar, that's what it becomes a reputational hazard. And that's something that the External Affairs Minister is pointing out. Indians, like you said, in the US at least, we're looking at one report which says we make up the third largest group of illegal immigrants in the US. just behind Mexico and El Salvador. So these immigrants, they're either undocumented or simply overstaying their tourist visas. So when the minister says that it's not reputationally good, how do you read it?
No, absolutely. I think we would be very happy, India would be very happy to get them back once it is proven beyond any shade of doubt that these people do belong to India, that they are Indian citizens, not, that they look Indian, like Indians and all, because, all South Asians, most of them look alike, number one. Number two, India is such a diverse country. So, from northeast to the south, from north to the west, there are so many different ethnicities of people. So it is not only looking like Indians, but, once it is there is evidence to prove that they are actually Indians, then of course they can be repatriated, and that will help, as the minister said, and as you repeated, reputationally good for India. But also, I think it will send out a very clear message to the Trump administration today, for whom, migration, immigration, and particularly illegal migration into their country is number one, top of the agenda. So when they find that, in addition to other benefits and advantages, India is very much on the same page with that country as far as this issue is concerned. And of course, whether it is getting legal migration, even whether it is Donald Trump or Elon Musk or many of the others, they have said that we need such talent from outside. I'm sure, those who are in decision-making positions, they realize that that America is a land of migrants.
Yes.
It has got this prosperity and it has got this riches as a result of the migrants who have come into that country.
Indeed.
And they, when the challenge is to compete with China, and particularly as far as the STEM subjects are concerned. And there is, India is very high on that particular pedestal. And also, if you look at it,
Yes.
as far as Indians are concerned, about 4-5 million Indian diaspora, they are the most well-educated in the United States. They are the most prosperous in the United States. They are most law-abiding people. So I think whenever I go out anywhere in the world,
Yes.
I meet so many people, and they come across and tell me, my doctor is in India, my teacher is in Indian, this person is an
Yes.
Indian. So, they
And yet,
send out a very strong
even as that is true, Ambassador, it is also true
Yes.
that the third largest population of illegal immigrants is also Indian. So, as far as what the External Affairs Minister is saying over here, would it be something that in your diplomacy terms, you would put it beyond just posturing? Or are we really expecting illegal migrants to be rounded up and repatriated to India, and for India to take them back is something that you see happening smoothly?
We have been accepting these migrants. Maybe they have not hit the headlines of the newspapers, but we have been accepting, what the Trump administration now calls it irregular migration. They don't call it illegal migration, they call it irregular migration. So, we have been accepting such people to India after due verification, after due checks and all that. And, it's not as if all the numbers that you showed, India is number 3 on that list, that all of them are going to come back together. There has to be a process. It will be a very detailed process. And in, bits and pieces, as they are confirmed that they are Indian citizens, they will be sent back. And I don't think that is posturing at all. And the other aspect, Vikram, if
Yes.
you permit me, and I can mention just in passing, that, as the Indian economy is growing, I think all these people who've been going out looking for greener pastures, as Indian economy grows from the 5th to the 3rd highest, the fastest growing major economy in the world, there are so many startups coming up, etc.
Yes.
So I think many more opportunities coming in India,
Yes.
so that they will not really be forced to go out of the country and look for engagement, better
Yes.
engagement and employment outside.
Which is why sometimes the higher numbers when it comes to illegal immigrants, Indian illegal immigrants in the US and other parts of the world is a bit befuddling. But tell us about the process, because you're saying it's already something that is happening. But when you talk about the Trump administration now pushing for this in a larger way, what are the logistics that we are considering over here? What's your sense also of the economics that are going to be involved in this? Who bears the cost? How does it actually work?
Yeah, okay. Let me put it this way, that number one, I think what the Trump administration is really looking at is, putting barriers on the southern border. Meaning this is the problem they've had with Mexico, and Mexico is the conduit of, the largest number of illegal migrants. So I think the first challenge is going to be there. And you would recall that even when, Mr. Trump was talking to Justin Trudeau, he'd said, illegal migration coming from there, drugs, smuggling, etc., etc. So, both of them are, conduits, both of them are sources from where illegal migrants are coming. Although I've spoken to a large number of people from the US, from Canada, and they say that, of course, the problem from the southern border is much greater than from the northern border.
Sure.
So I think first challenge is, constructing a wall, putting barriers, putting, security officials there. Then I think the next step is going to be looking at who are the illegal migrants who are already stationed in the United States, who are undocumented there. And basically, as far as if this is something that we'll have to negotiate with the American side as to who bears the cost of, their transportation back to India. But let me tell you that whenever such cases arise, all Indian embassies and missions, consulates, etc., they have a particular fund for the benefit of the Indian diaspora, that if there is any problem, someone falls sick, someone has an accident, someone has to be sent back, someone is deceased and her or his, body has to be sent back, there is always a fund that is in the Indian embassy, which can be utilized for such purposes.
But we're talking about such large numbers, sir.
Sorry?
We're talking about such large numbers at this time.
No, large numbers, you're very right. But as I said, it's not going to happen all at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be sort of,
in phases.
In phases, and over a longish period of time, and we'll really have to wait and see.
Certainly,
that as to how this shapes up. Yeah,
certainly. And Ambassador, in passing, also I also want to ask you, because the minister has spoken about the need to ease processes around legal migration, something that is mutually beneficial is what he said. And then Trump has said at a news conference where the chiefs of Oracle and SoftBank and OpenAI were present that he likes very competent people coming into the US, showing his real support for the H-1B program in that sense. So will Trump fend off those critics in his own administration who don't want to see the H-1B visas taking jobs away from Americans? Do you think that is likely to happen as well?
Okay, let me put it this way. Yes, as far as visa issuance is concerned, that's a real problem as far as the United States is concerned. I think all other countries, whether it is UK, Europe, all of them within 10 days, 14 days, you are able to get a visa. And increasingly after COVID-19, when countries want more tourists, I see around the world, Indian passport holders are being invited, are being allowed to come into their countries either with visa on arrival or with e-visas or even visa-free for, 30 days or 90 days. So I think that if, we have to take the relationship forward. And as far as US is concerned, it is a comprehensive global strategic partnership that we have with that country.
That's right.
And that is not served well if these processes are so very long. So, definitely that would balance it out. If you have to take our business forward, bilateral trade to $500 billion from about $180, $190 billion, you cannot keep businessmen or others waiting for 400 days to get visas.
Right.
So I think definitely this is a very valid point that the minister has made.
Yes.
And I'm sure it would be, the American side needs to look at it. Although Mr. Garcetti from here, the former ambassador, he was saying that, we have issued a record number of visas to Indian nationals, but still
But
there
this
is a
is
long
still
way
going
to
to
come
require
up.
some amount of diplomatic maneuvering, and there are these moving pieces in this entire issue of illegal and legal immigration between India and the US. Of course, we'll be tracking all of these very closely. But for the moment, we thank you for your insights, Ambassador Sajjanhar. Always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
India
Likewise,
Tonight.
Vikram. Thank you. All the
Cheers.
best. Bye-bye.
Meanwhile, we're looking at the numbers.